best friend, she's 23. She left her body and hovered above me. Best friend, she's 23. I heard the heavens crying above me. They gained an angel, I lost a friend. I felt like dying again and again. I went through hell, stared at death, but I keep fighting with each living breath. I saw no way out from where I stood. Felt like the fire had burned me through. Now you're gone, I'm alone. I guess it's time to get better. Through the pain, I will go alone. If I fall, break my bones, I will scream even louder. 'Cause I'm not dying alone. I lost my best friend.
That's nice.
Hey guys, it's me and Jonathan. Welcome. I know there was a black screen for a little bit. If you can hear us, please let us know. Hope you enjoyed our little transitions. I've been trying to up the quality of these. But also, we're going to take a second to just say hello of our one audience member in Discord stages. We want you guys to trickle in there as well. Hello, Artistry. We are presenting at the same time on our stream. So if you check out the link, you'll be there. We are going to give some opportunity for you and maybe any other audience members that do show up a chance to engage with us throughout this discussion, because we want it to be more beneficial for you and everyone watching throughout this. So if you guys can all join the Discord stage, we will give you guys a chance to raise your hands to chat, or you guys can just respond in the chat box. But please open up both, and we will be getting started shortly. We'll let more and more people trickle in. And yeah, how's everyone's day going? I mean, I'll tell you guys something just completely random. Yesterday I celebrated a wedding for one of my close friends, and throughout COVID I haven't been drinking at all. I've been really healthy. I had 3 drinks and I felt terrible. So yeah, I'm recovering today, and it's just interesting how my body adapted to not handle 3 small drinks. They weren't big, they were just champagne and old fashioned, and I definitely mixed, so that might have led to that. But yeah, so recovering a little bit today, but still I'm here. I'm here with Jonathan, and we're gonna talk about deliberate practice. Anything new with you guys?
Also, I would definitely recommend muting the stream or stages so that you don't get both of us at the same time. That's not the most fun acoustically. We should be muted, but just in case.
Yeah, exactly. We will prompt you to raise your hand throughout this process, but again, we are gonna let you guys trickle in. If you guys see me looking up, it's because I have my chat right above. I have a little monitor mounted, and that's how I see my chat. So don't think I'm just looking up for no reason. Actually, I don't know if you guys knew this, but I used to do this thing when I would meet people. I would play this game because based on where you look when you're asked a question, there's often these patterns of, if you're thinking of something like retrieving a memory, you're thinking of something that's auditory, or if you're thinking of something kinesthetic, you can kind of predict what they're thinking of based on where their eyes move. And it's interesting that most people, when they're thinking of like a visual memory, they're looking up and to the left. So it's just like a quick thing that actually like people use to cold read, and people use to seem like they can read you, but it's based off this physiologic cue that our eyes give. Just this random thing that I used to do to make people think that I knew exactly what they were thinking. I forgot the exact script or story that I would say, but it was interesting, I know we're muted on Discord. We're just going to be talking here, and then we're going to be prompting you guys to ask questions, so that we could have a great engaging conversation. Hi, Wicked. Hope you're doing well. Good to see you in here. I remember, actually there's this book called Range that actually talks about wicked and what's the other word? Wicked and something environments, but wicked environments representing, more variable or open environments. I don't know, it just makes me think of that. So we will probably be starting in a little bit, but anything else new with you, Jonathan?
I passed the first part of American boards, which is a lot of stress in my life, but that's exciting. I'm already licensed in Canada, but trying to go for that dual licensure.
We're trying to bring Jonathan to the States.
Yep.
This is 1HP trying to expand our work in the States, and we're trying to bring Jonathan here. So he's been doing the work, and he passed his first part of his licensure. So just congratulate him. Good job. Good job,
Thank you,
Jonathan.
thank you. I appreciate it. I've done so many standardized tests in my life that it just feels like another day.
Right.
Sometimes. But I've also taken up running. Kate McGee, Dr. Kate McGee, one of the other lovely team members, is a very, very competent runner. And unfortunately, where I am in Ontario, the gyms aren't open yet, so I needed something.
You've been
So
running.
I take up
Interesting.
running.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I ran. The most I've ran in a week is 11K so far, which is a lot for me.
That is a lot. That is a lot.
Yeah.
I've just been doing, my home workouts. I've been climbing. That's sort of been
Nice.
what I've been doing in the past. Like throughout COVID, that's been my exercise regimen. 2 times a week climbing, 3 times a week weightlifting. And then I did do like morning bike rides every now and then. But, that was just something else. But, we have a good amount of people. But, sorry, what were you going to say?
No, one of my patients recently, he works in construction and he made his own home gym. So he cast his own plates from concrete and used PVC pipes as the collars. I know. And then he built his own squat rack made out of solid maple. It was
That's amazing. That's amazing.
I was so impressed. Part of me was just, can you build me one?
That's the dream, guys. That is the dream.
Yeah.
All right. Now that we are here, and now that you guys have trickled in, we're just gonna get started, right? And for people that are just gradually trickling in, we're just gonna say hello a little bit to everyone in the Discord to make sure that they are also on the stream so they can see what we're seeing. So just give us a second. Hey guys, everyone in the Deliberate Practice AMA. I hope you guys can hear me well. If you guys haven't already, please click on the link to hop onto the stream. We have this presentation that we want to deliver. And throughout the presentation, we're going to leave room for engagement. We're going to ask you guys some questions, and we want you guys to get a lot out of this. So please feel free to raise your hand within the stages, and we'll set you up to talk so that we can really talk through some situations. And break down how we can maybe be more intentional with our practice design. So check that out. Hop into the stream, and we're just gonna go ahead and get started. I'm gonna mute myself now in the stages and start the presentation. Boom. We're gonna transition over using my hotkey. Right here it is. Wait, which one? You guys want to see my face? Maybe we'll do my face first. Okay, so welcome guys. This is our discussion on deliberate practice. And really the idea here is to help you guys answer the question of, well, I do want you guys to see my face here. How do you know if you guys are getting value out of your practice? Right? Performing at our best is not something that we should leave up to chance or external circumstances. We can really design how we're training, how we're practicing, so we can achieve better results day to day, week to week, month to month, and realize that it's a long-term goal and process to get to where we want to be, which might be international level of play, professional level of play, or just climbing the ranks for whatever game that you are currently playing. And we are in a really great community within Voltaic, because we already have a lot of intentional individuals who practice and have objective measures to work by to make sure that you guys are improving on specific subsets of skill. Today we are going to be focusing on this framework or this theory of deliberate practice. And so moving forward, I want to give you guys a little bit of a history. The history is that there's a psychologist named Anders Ericsson, and he started and had the research that became the basis for what we know as the 10,000 hours rule, which is often largely debated and often misinterpreted, and actually came from because this book from Malcolm Gladwell, if I'm not sure if you guys have heard of it, of the outliers that kind of defined just generally if someone practices a lot, they have the potential to become the things that they want to, whether it be a world-class musician or a top physicist. If you just practice enough, the 10,000 hours, you will get there. And, it really got memed because it is the underlying definition that they utilized that was not accurate. It was not what Anders Ericsson initially discussed in some of his earlier research. I believe it was in 1997-ish, and all of the research kind of flowed out from there. And I mean, there's been multiple studies nowadays. You'll see the one up at the top, and then Baker and Young, basically saying, actually in 2013 they showed that it's roughly around 25,000 hours would be more accurate to get to winning international piano competitions. Of course, setting the benchmark at that could make the hours seem higher. But, Baker and Young, this other study, and this was studying a wide range of sports, and this is a 2014 study that showed it's between 3,000 to 40,000 hours of engagement in these domain-specific activities that help them reach that high level of performance, right? And then there's some other ones, Goblet and Campitelli. Essentially, the idea is, guys, if you practice, they debunk the idea that if you practice enough, you'll become an expert. It's how you practice, and it's important that we go through the definition of what that means, what is deliberate practice, to really understand how we can make the most or get the most value out of our practice. So this is just a history lesson to set the basis, right? There's this 10,000 hours rule. There's this guy that talked about deliberate practice. It was taken out of context in some meta-analyses in 2014. Blah, blah, blah. We won't get into the details of that. But we want to define deliberate practice well, right? And that's where we get into this next point. So Jonathan, if you want to help define deliberate practice, and maybe actually before we get into that, what do you guys think deliberate practice is? What's your best guess? Why don't you give us if anyone wants to raise their hand or even type in the chat, what do you guys think is deliberate practice? Let's give them a chance to respond.
Yeah. And thank you, Infinite Magic. I appreciate it. All right. Let's see here.
So we'll just give you guys. Let's see. Do we have any hand show requests? You guys can make some requests to speak if you want to talk here in the Discord and offer any of your definitions as to what deliberate practice is. All right, we have one. We got one, guys. Hey, Nick.
Hello.
What do you think deliberate practice is?
I'd say it is when you use a technique that works for you, and you try to actively apply it and yourself to do it as efficiently as possible.
Okay, so I love that.
That's what I think.
Okay.
So I think he's on the right path, right? Describing it as doing something that, a technique that, you found works for you.
Right.
Which definitely has some truth to it, but we want to zoom out a little more. So let's see what we can do to zoom out a little more. Any other thoughts from other individuals?
We have a bunch of responses in chat now.
Yeah, let's read those. And I don't know how to remove these requests, but Nick.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nick. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's go through these, right? Effective.
Yeah.
Practice with an agenda or purpose. Ooh, love it.
Yep.
Jason Cow, conscious thought about your action. I love that. And okay, here we go. We got Hot Rod coming in hot. Practicing with specific granular goals in mind for each session.
Perfect.
Yes! I'm standing up. Hold on, you guys don't see me. I'm standing up. I'm walking around. That is definitely part of it, right? Hold on.
Mm-hmm.
Good job. That's right. So yeah, I mean, if you want to touch on some of the responses and help define it a little bit more.
Yeah. So for us, deliberate practice is practice with that intent. And if you go by Ericsson's definition, it's actually deliberate practice is a highly structured activity, the explicit goal of which is to improve importance. So Hot Rod kind of hit the nail on the head here. It's not just practicing with just, you know what, I'm going to go into Kovacs and just run a couple situations. I'm going to run a couple hours in there, and then we'll just see what happens. It's intentfully knowing what you want to work on and then going after it. So is my tracking really bad? Is my flicking something that I need to work on? All of those things are specific, and that's the importance behind deliberate practice. And if we define it a little bit more, in our world, deliberate practice is deliberate practice and expert coaching. Now, this doesn't mean that you need to hire an aim coach and you need to have someone looking over everything all the time, but having a way to get feedback is extremely important. So the Voltaic benchmarks are a great way to do this, right? When you run through the benchmarks, it tells you, okay, no, my dynamic clicking isn't the best, or my flicking isn't the best. And this is a great way to get that feedback.
So, to review, the definition, as Erickson states in his research, deliberate practice is a highly structured activity, the explicit goal of which to improve performance. He goes on further to really define it as purposeful practice plus expert coaching, and this was in his book Peak, that came out, I think it was 2013, 2017, recently. But this is how it's defined, right? Purposeful practice plus expert coaching. And then what do you guys think is the goal, right? What is the goal of deliberate practice? What is the end goal that we're trying to achieve by practicing? This one's a little more important. And again, I'm going to ask you guys to type in the chat, what do you guys think? I know Artistry, you wanted to speak. I'm going to quickly dismiss it for now. And again, if you want to speak up again, raise your hand and I will let you guys in the audience speak up as to what you think the goal is for deliberate practice. Like, why are we practicing? What is the end goal for us? And it's not, I mean, it could be, oh, I just want to get better, but there's something specific that we're looking for. And
it's not just get.
Yeah,
it's
go
not
ahead.
just climbing the ladder. It's not just climbing the ladder.
Right.
I'll give that as a hint for free. Improvement, that's part of it. But we're looking for something a little bit more specific, Jake.
Yeah, there's this bigger way that we can look at it. Okay, so we have Artistry. He's back. Inviting him to speak out. So go ahead, Artistry. Go ahead if you can just let us know, what do you think is the goal of deliberate practice?
So I would say, like, generally that's up to you. Like, you would want to, like, VOD review one of your games and, like, pick something that you feel like you're not improving on, or like that you can improve more on, and then every time you practice, like, you'd keep that goal in mind and, like, try to improve that. So it's up to you to, like, set that goal.
And so I love it how you approach this, right? So everyone, if you guys didn't hear, he said that it's focusing on something that you are setting a goal on while you're in practice, and you can use VOD review to identify that thing. And I really want to highlight what you said, that something is actually the end result of what we're looking for, guys. It is, right? That is the one thing. And so what we describe that as is actually, it's called a mental representation, or it's a mental model. And Artistry, again, if you don't mind just going back to the audience, we're gonna describe this all through. But thank you so much for that.
Great. Great answer.
Right. So guys, it is mental representations, right? A mental model, which is our understanding of how things work, right? The world is complex. And when we're playing a certain game, we need to simplify certain parts of the mechanics or the strategy of a game so that we can understand it better, right? And what sets performers apart from everyone else is the quality, I didn't pronounce that right, and the quantity of these mental models, right? So it's, again, something that helps you understand how things work, right? A model of how it works. And a really good example of this is in chess, right? How do they really understand how to make better decisions all the time? Do they have to actively think about it all the time? Or is it this accumulation of models and chunks and patterns that they've accumulated intentionally and subconsciously, probably through playing and working with a coach, that helps them make better decisions? Right? And so researchers estimated by the time a chess player becomes master, he or she has accumulated 50,000 of these chunks. Right? A master who examines a chess position sees these collections of patterns, and he or she organizes hierarchically with groups of chunks arranged in higher level patterns, right? And that hierarchy is sort of analogous to what we want to create or think about in the game that we're playing. Before we maybe offer some examples, does that make sense to you guys, or do you guys have any questions with that?
Yes. Getting some great answers here from Hot Rod again. Let's see. Explicit and implicit memory from machine write. That's very good.
Yep.
Because to me, a mental model is automating some of those skills that you can. For example, a great example to dive into it a little bit would be aim, right? You practice aim so you don't have to think about it in an FPS, and then you can focus on other things like map control, things like coordinating with your team in Valorant, and coordinating ults, coordinating utility, all those things. Donnie says bite-sizing the goals into specific areas to work on in practice and drills. Imagery of what that may look like tends to help me.
That's amazing.
That's also good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Right, so does that make sense, everyone? Do you guys understand now what a mental representation or what a mental model is? Again, could be map control, could be in FPS games, you want to trade kills in certain in situations. Could be you're last alive, certain amount of time left, you need to play patient or play the bomb. That's a mental model, right? That's a mental representation. And outside of the game, it could be something like the law of diminishing returns, the law of confirmation bias. Those are all mental models of the world, right? And so practice is designed to develop mental representations. All right? We're done, right? No, we're not. We are not done, because we want to help you guys. We want to break this down a little further, right? We want to get to purposeful practice and help you guys understand what those components are, right? So Infinite Magic says, so you want to have a specific mental model when going into deliberate practice, or you want to develop them by doing the practice. What would you say, John?
I would say you want to build on the models you have going into practice, but then you also want to develop them as you are doing the practice. So I think you can answer with honestly a little bit of both. It depends on whether you're building a model from the ground up or whether you're trying to develop and make a model stronger by going through some repetitions.
Exactly. So it'll become more clear. That question and the answer will become more clear as we move along through this. So let's get to the steps. Oh, well, I didn't use this image example, but frontline backline is a mental model.
Exactly. If you're the Zaya, you want to make sure. In this case, we're going to assume that the LeBlanc and the Zac in the bottom left corner. And for all the people who don't play League, you can just turn off your brains for a second. That's okay. So the Zaya, the Riven, and the Zill are on red side. If you're playing as the Zaya, you want to make sure that you're aware that, okay, I don't see any other people. Where might they be on the map? Have they shown on the map? All those things are part of the mental model that you're constantly building in game with the information that you both have and the information that you're taking in. So you can think of the mental model as a way for you to process all the information that's coming at you as efficiently and effectively as possible. So when you recognize a certain pattern in game, that tells you, okay, this is what might be happening. And it cuts down, instead of this humongous funnel of information, it cuts it down to, okay, it's these situations I need to care about.
Efficient information processing. Okay, so let's break down the components of purposeful practice. And the first step that we always have to take, what do we need to start with?
We need to. What do people think? Oh, MT4 Grizzly had a question. So deliberate practice is the idea of approaching practice with deep thinking to analyze what you need to work on and how, rather than just autopilot your training.
Wow, what a great transition, right?
Yeah.
What a great transition here, because deep thinking to analyze what you need to work on. What is step 0, Jonathan?
Self-evaluation. What it's
Right.
going to be. How do you know what to work on if you don't take the time to figure out what you're weak at? So again, going back to Voltaic benchmarks, going through them will tell you what parts of VAN you need to spend more time on. And it is a great way to start off and get into a plan of, okay, you know what, my flicking's great, let's work some more on tracking, but okay, with the tracking, is it my predictive tracking that I need more help with, or the reactive, right? It's those things that can really, really make your practice that much more efficient.
I'm turning you up a little bit, Jonathan, but
Okay.
here what we wanted to do is
Yep.
we wanted to take a step back and help and work through with you guys. Let's evaluate together on a certain game what you need to work on, and then we can go through these steps together, all in the audience. So let's have one person from the audience request to speak. You're going to tell us what game that you're playing, and maybe tell us what are the important aspects of the game, what you feel are the important aspects of the game. And then we can break it down together and maybe have you establish a rating for yourself on some of these categories. And then we're going to work through the specific steps to see how we can design a purposeful practice. So just going to be waiting for you guys. Anyone that wants to volunteer to just kind of describe, hey, this is the game I play. And, we'll talk about, what's important for the game.
Mm-hmm.
And, right, the questions that we want to answer are, what is your understanding of the game and your own competencies of the game? And how do you know, what you need to work on if you don't understand where you are at certain parts of the game? And a lot of the times we can start with this initial framework of, okay, well, there's game intelligence, right, the game knowledge, and then there's mechanics. Right, so we have artistry ready here. Artistry, hello, artistry, welcome back. So if you don't mind starting by telling us what game it is that you're playing currently.
Currently I'm playing Overwatch.
Nice.
Awesome. And what role are you playing?
I'm playing DPS.
Oh,
Got
nice,
it.
nice.
Okay, are you hit scan or what type of
Hit scan.
DPS? Got it.
Okay.
Okay. That's why, hence, Voltaic. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, so where right now I work with the gladiators, so this will be an interesting case to discuss. So let's start by, what do you feel like are the things that we can break down Overwatch gameplay to, and we can use the framework of game knowledge and mechanics.
Yeah, I would say game knowledge. There's like game sense.
Okay.
Kind of knowing like what strats you need to use to
Right.
predicting like what your opponents are gonna do.
Uh-huh.
And then I would say there's like positioning, which also kind of falls
Yes.
into game knowledge.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Then I would say mechanics is just kind of like using your abilities, and then
Mm-hmm.
some abilities don't require mechanics, but some do. And
Right.
then there's just general aim.
Yep. So that's a great start, right? We have positioning.
Spacing.
Mhm.
Sorry, go on. Sorry,
Oh,
what
no,
did you?
I'm done.
Oh, sorry. So sorry I interrupted.
No, sorry.
So you said predicting, positioning. I also think like things like ult tracking, right? Like that's also
yeah,
quite
okay.
important in Overwatch, and right, like execution of the plan, and and if we wanted to break it down even further, positioning can be like, okay, well, front line versus back line relative positioning, and then there's also like key target positioning, right? So there's a lot of ways we can break down the game, right? And so artistry, what is something that you've been working on if within these categories, right? Predicting, positioning, ult tracking, abilities, aiming. What are you working on?
Right now, I'm just working on positioning.
Got it.
I'm still pretty low level, so I die a lot to positioning. So that's the main thing I'm focusing on.
Got it. Okay, right. So, guys, he's evaluated that as one of the things that he's working on, right? And if we have this huge list in front of us, there's something called the Pareto principle, which is like the 80-20 rule, or if you guys hear a lot, it's the idea of min-maxing. You can choose on most of the time. There's going to be a few things that you work on that will yield the most results. I would say, in general, from my experience, at the lower ranks, mechanics dominate dominate in terms of allowing you to progress rank play, or in terms of progression for improvement with rank, because you can just get away with making a lot of mistakes. Whereas if you're really progressing in the sense of positioning well, you're also relying on your teammates, right? And a lot of the times at lower ranks, you can't really truly rely on that. So it means that we have to decide, do I want to only work on positioning, or do I want to prioritize positioning over aiming? And those are some of the things that we have to be mindful about when we break down or evaluate ourselves. And so I know that sounds like a lot, probably to you, artistry, hopefully not too much, but I think that's a really good start for us, right? And we're going to get into these upcoming steps. So I'm actually going to ask you to, just mute yourself, because we're going to ask you a few other things, okay? If you just stay with us. So, right, we've established this. We're going to evaluate where we are. Great. For Voltaic, that says what? That says where we have these benchmarks. So what's step one then, Jonathan?
Yeah.
Step one is setting those specific goals, right? If you play deathmatch game and focus on positioning throughout the duration of the game, how do you judge if you're successful? It's not just skills, but it's not just skills, sorry, but it's also, are you putting yourself in a position to create a crossfire? Are you covering for your tanks or your supports, depending on the game? It's more than that. And when you play a game and focus on trading kills well or coordinating with one teammate to maximize the kill, that's much more important, because it's a higher percentage play, right? So there's an art to setting goals, but it has to be realistic, and you have to appropriately problem solve to identify which goal will lead to the most results.
Exactly.
And that's the whole.
Sorry,
exactly. We're both really excited to present this to you guys, so just bear with us. Exactly.
So then, artistry, right? If we want to set a specific goal, it can't just be positioning, right? It needs to be more specific. So is there a way that you can be more specific with what you mean by positioning? Do you want to position better relative to your healer? Do you want to position better relative to your backline, to your frontline? What do you mean? And maybe you can work with us to establish this more specific goal.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure. So I would say, generally, like identifying like when I can take kind of aggressive off angles, and be able to pick off the enemy's backline more, instead of just kind of staying kind of in the middle, like in main, just kind of shooting at his shield, like.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got it.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, the specific goal might be, I want to improve my positioning by looking for better opportunities to find aggressive angles.
Yeah.
So and so by being that specific,
A little bit.
or by being more specific in that way, that will help you also identify if you're doing well in that, right? Then you're already primed to think about that as you go into your ranked game. You're looking for that specific opportunity, and you'll be primed, as I just mentioned, to make a better decision when it comes. And so the idea is, okay, well, like, how do I know what's a good angle? You either have to work it out in a custom game, or you can just be creative on the spot and try different things. But that helps you, as we've mentioned, create this better mental model, right? So I think that specific goal will be better for you than just saying positioning. Does that make sense for everyone? And for you, Artistry?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Got it. So that's just one part, right? Okay, yeah, we set this goal. Okay, there's more to this. So we're gonna move on to the next step, right? The next step is, hey, you gotta focus, right? You gotta have a full attention on this task, which is why it's really important. You know, for us as healthcare providers, we need to be cognizant of our energy, our arousal levels. So taking care of our sleep, nutrition, exercise, so that we can maximize our focus for this period of time that we're playing. We don't want to have a dip in energy or be sleep deprived and use that time to improve because we're not fully engaged, right? And we need to have that full attention and focus to be able to, one, pay attention to the cue. In this case, for Artistry, he needs to pay attention to opportunities for aggressive angles. He's looking for relative positions of where the enemy is, and he can maybe, as a widow, shoot his grappling hook to get a side angle, or using Hanzo, he can jump and get a small window of opportunity to hit scan or hit someone to take advantage of that. So really looking for those opportunities. So step 2, I think this is more or less intuitive, but do you have any other thoughts with this, John?
I think it's important. It just ties back into the idea of the deliberate practice. So when you're practicing, try to be really present when you're practicing. So it's not just going through the motions. You're thinking about, okay, what is that specific goal I had in mind, the specific goal that I just came up with, and how do I look for opportunities to get those reps in? Exactly.
Yeah.
And Konkibe, I'm sorry if I pronounced it wrong, but that's a great way to look at it. You keep playing the game, you try to find problems you struggle with, and you fix them. That's a lot of what deliberate practice is about, building those mental models up to be robust and applicable in more and more situations, which leads us into the next step, which is immediate feedback. Immediate feedback. So the Voltaic benchmarks are another great example of this. It lets you figure out what aspects of aim do you really need to work on. Where are your strengths? Where are your weaknesses? Are you better at the reactive tracking? Are you better at the precise tracking? Or is it maybe that you need to do some evasive switching work, right? Once you complete a benchmark and you go through all of them, then you know where you need to put in the effort to improve the most efficiently.
So this is different, right? Obviously, it's easier to have a feedback with aiming. You're not hitting your benchmark, okay, then you're not getting better, right? So, but that's different with what I mentioned before, a wicked environment, like competitive Overwatch, in the case of Artistry. Then it really requires you to get feedback for that specific thing. So again, Artistry, we're now talking about how can you get immediate feedback for this specific goal, right? And I think there's several ways that I can think of, but I wanted to see if you had any ideas. How can you get feedback to know if you're doing well with taking better aggressive angles and finding those opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, generally, if I'm getting kills on the backline, kind of uncontested, then I know I'm probably on a pretty good angle. If I'm dying, or if I'm like dying too early, then I'm probably too aggressive, or I'm not taking the right angle.
Exactly.
So that's why I like positioning. I can get immediate feedback based on just dying or getting kills.
And Matt, I like how he had both positive and negative feedback there. So if he gets the kills on the back line, that's a very positive aspect of feedback. And if he's dying, then that's negative feedback. And both are very useful to fine-tuning that mental model. Oh, yes, Artistry, did you cut out a little bit? Were you trying to say something else?
There's a little bit of delay, so if you're going to be talking to him, you should be using unmute.
Right.
But yeah, so artistry, you'll probably hear his response in the audio of the stream. But basically, we love that you mentioned positive and negative feedback. And another way we can look at it is if you have the time, you can get really, really specific, right? You can look at the VOD, you can see, all right, in these engagements, I did pretty well. And objectively, I'm making progress here. I mean, that definitely does take more time, but I would say it just depends on you, right? And how much time you have to dedicate to this. But I think depending on the goal, like this aggressive and non-aggressive, or taking aggressive angles, using death and using kills can be a general measure for feedback. The other method is also, hey, what if you get a coach, right? And that is the discussion that we'll get into later about expert coaching. But let's move on to step 4, right? Which is that it's important. Well, I forgot to put this up, but hey, yeah, feedback, great.
Yep.
Step 4 is to get uncomfortable. Get comfortable with getting uncomfortable. Get out of your comfort zone, right? And that's shown in the research many, many times, right? They compared physicians that became complacent, that are older, that don't go and do as much continuing education courses, and then those that are more recent graduates taking courses every week, and those that are more intentional about getting regular education. Guess what? They have less medical malpractice, right? Because they're frequently getting uncomfortable, frequently progressing themselves, right? And that's the idea of making sure that we improve. We don't get complacent. And there's a little bit of neuroscience to support this, or there is neuroscience to support this. Just wanted to go over this with you guys pretty briefly. Errors help us stimulate change. And why do you guys think this is the case? Why do you guys think when we make mistakes, we can actually stimulate a positive change?
We'll just wait for the delay to catch up.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks again to Artistry for being so open with us. It's awesome to have some participation from everybody, from the community.
Yeah, we'll just give everyone a chance.
Yeah. Everybody likes to be big brain.
Okay. My opinion about being uncomfortable, making mistakes can make you improve way more. Okay, survival. Machine right. You're really good, right? When do we learn the fastest?
Sorry, did you guys ask me a question?
No, you're good.
No, you're good, Artistry. Thanks. We'll touch base a little bit at the end of this, so you can still stay here. But yes. So why is survival important, right? We learn the fastest when we need to do something to survive, right? If there was 2 individuals, you ask one, all right, you have a year to learn French, and then the other guy's like, all right, there's a machine gun in front of you, and you have a week to learn French. You better believe the guy that has a machine gun in front of them is gonna make it work. He's gonna learn fast, right? Or, I mean, and that idea can be represented among multiple, through other examples, but it's not just survival. It is, if we don't make errors, we're not challenged. And if we're not challenged, that means we can't grow, right? And they've shown many, many times humans who are not comfortable with making errors, they don't progress as quickly as those who are comfortable and seek out the frustration. And they perceive frustration and errors as an opportunity to learn. And so that's really important for you guys, that when you're frustrated, it means you're almost there. And this perception is really at the root of it. We can perceive our frustration as, wow, I'm almost to the point where I'm getting this breakthrough, or damn it, I suck. Those 2 ways of approaching things can lead to 2 completely different results and 2 completely different individuals. So making errors helps us change, right? And so the neuroscience of it is that, when we're focusing on something, we release acetylcholine, which helps us focus. We release epinephrine, which keeps us alert. And then when we make the right decision, you know, we build up more epinephrine and alertness when we make these mistakes. And then that gets us that frustrated feeling. And then when we make the right decision, when we're aware of it, in this case with artistry, if he's making the right decision to take this play, he gets this dopamine hit. And that will signal plasticity or signal changes in our brain, in the hippocampus or our midbrain, to allow us to learn. Right? So there is that neuroscience component of this, that, hey, making mistakes is not a bad thing. It's how we perceive it. So, moving on. So let's do a quick review with artistry. Artistry, we said step 1, evaluate. You said, hey, we're gonna work on positioning, taking aggressive angles. Step 2, hey, we said you have to be focused. Hopefully you are focused. You're taking care of your sleep. You're taking care of your nutrition. Step 3, you use immediate feedback as your and deaths and kills as your goal or feedback to let you know if you're doing well in this. And then step 4 is you want to put yourself in these situations more and more. Take the aggressive angles. Who cares what other people say? Because you will learn and you will develop this better mental model in approaching XYZ or whatever. And for your case, positioning and taking aggressive peaks. Does that make sense, artistry?
Yeah, that last one I didn't really think about. That's really good. No.
Awesome. So I want to thank you for, obviously taking the time to just work through this with us. Just going to ask that you now head back into the audience, and we're going to still have some time to ask questions, so you might be able to be brought back. So thanks again. We're going to move on to the next part of deliberate practice. We talked about purposeful practice, and now we're talking about expert coaching. So
Exactly.
take it away.
So
mute yourself in Discord, by the way, because you are
Good call.
chatting.
Good call. So expert coaching is the other half of the equation if we're going back to the beginning of the presentation, where we were talking about how deliberate practice is both the purposeful practice and the expert coaching. And going off of what Matt just said, the expert coaching provides that immediate feedback as well as the perspective so that you can understand where you might have made mistakes, where you might have gone right whenever you're playing to improve that much faster. And what the coach really does is it helps you build those mental models that much quicker, because they can say, all right, so when you were in this situation in game, what were you thinking? What do you think you should have been thinking? And then what were your decisions? And implementing some form of some help with another set of eyes, with especially a coach who is going to work well with you, who is going to be someone you can trust, makes a big difference. And unfortunately in our industry right now, there are a lot of coaches, and I would say some of them would fall more into the realm of an analyst and doesn't have quite the same ability to help as much as a coach would. So if you are going to choose an AIM coach, just choose someone who has a good track record, who is going to really help you and make it a positive experience. And
so I do want to add a caveat to that, because I think you make a really good point there, right? In that it's really important that when you're speaking or working with a coach, in that they're helping you advance your understanding of a situation. And they're not just saying, you did bad here, don't do this, do this. That's not a coach. A coach helps and creates an environment where you can learn. And if they are not providing you with that, then they're providing you with a VOD review. They're providing you with an analyst service. Hey, this is what I noticed that you did. There's no promotion of learning. There's no promoting of this environment where you're thinking for yourself. You're making a better decision, or you're learning what decisions to make. And exactly what Jonathan said, right? Is there a cue that he or she is pointing you towards? Hey, like, how did you think about this? Or, what could you have thought of differently in this case? And what can you consider here? And those questions is really the sign of a good coach, because that will help you develop a better understanding of these various situations in a game. So I just wanted to touch on that because I think that's really important right now in esports.
Yeah.
and Machine Right, that's every Fortnite coach. Exactly. So, you know, here's this really good sign for you guys. If you're going to spend money, like really spend it on someone that creates a structure for you and helps you learn. Because ultimately, you know, that's what you want to get out of it. You want to develop better mental models. So, sorry, go on. Did you have anything else to add with expert coaching?
If you look at the bottom right of the slide, you can see that there's a bunch of numbers there. And that's going back to a study that we touched on a little bit earlier, where a person's trying to learn to just remember as a long string of digits as possible. And what the coach helped this person with was, instead of trying to brute force it and just remember single digits, is you chunk them into digits that are more similar or have some sort of relationship. So instead of just remembering one digit at a time, he would remember 2 or 3. And that mental model made a big shift in this person's performance when trying to recall all these numbers. And ultimately, they were able to remember a lot more after this paradigm shift than they did previously. And that's what a coach can do. They can help you improve faster. So a good coach will help you learn and will help you improve, not just in that one session, but they should help you make a framework for yourself so that you can keep improving in perpetuity.
Exactly. Love that. So, guys, we went over a lot. Let's review some steps that you guys can take. Right. What we did with artistry is what you guys can do, you know, on your own. Step 0, evaluate yourself or work with a coach, a real coach that can evaluate and has his own framework. This is what I feel is important for this game. In Overwatch, it should be this and this, and you are missing this category. I've evaluated you by looking at your VODs, not just, I'm going to watch you play this one time, and then I'm going to give you just a random set of exercises that still might be beneficial, but isn't intentional in this structure for learning. So, evaluate with yourself or with a coach. Step 1, you want to, review your own gameplay, and I guess that's the same, but you're setting a goal. Well, maybe I added step 0, and you can combine step 0 and step 1 because that's essentially the same thing. Step 2 is setting that goal, right? Setting the goal so you know what you're going to be working on in the next day and in the next few days. And you want to not just set 1, you can set 2 to 3, right? We want to utilize our working memory. Everyone's a little different, but maybe maximum 4 to 5, but at a minimum 2 to 3. Set some daily goals for yourself so you can pay attention, prime your focus to pay attention to those situations so that you can make progress towards that. Step 3, you set some way to get immediate feedback. Watch your VOD, work with a coach to get feedback, whether it be you actually going through all the situations and saying, all right, man, I took this angle and it was terrible. I did not do it. And as you continue to evaluate yourself, you'll have your own rating. Like, I did pretty well today. In 50% of my engagements, I did well. So I got a 7 out of 10. And with each day, you can, very specifically improve. And yes, this might seem tedious for most, but this is just the general framework that we want to help you guys maybe adopt. It doesn't mean you have to, set it aside and really rate your performance for everything. It just means that you should at least know if you're making progress with 1 or 2 things. And as an example, guys, I went through this residency for orthopedic physical therapy, and it's crazy. I mean, it's not crazy, but it's interesting. What they do is they sit with me for every patient for an entire year, and they criticize and assess how I approach the beginning of my interview, the treatment session, the concluding part of my session. And through that's some crazy deliberate practice. I really improved my clinical reasoning significantly. Mm-hmm. And really what they say in that realm of orthopedic physical therapy or physical therapy in general is that when you have a residency, you sort of advance your clinical reasoning by 5 years because you're developing this really efficient thought process. So, in the same way that, I had some coaching or feedback, you guys can do that with either yourself or with a coach, and how you design it can maybe improve your progress as a player. And I would just say, there is so much that we described here. You can get really, really granular. But I would say you will make progress if you just set one goal, right? We're not asking you to just write an essay every single time you're playing, but hey, like at least have some intent with how you're playing if you really want to get better at a game. If you're just playing casually, then you can just leave. Probably this is not going to benefit you. But it just depends on what you're playing games for. So.
Exactly.
Did you have anything else to add for implementation, Jonathan?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that you don't need to have a coach, but a coach does speed things up. So if for whatever reason it's not in the cards for you monetarily, or you don't find something you like, you can always self-coach yourself. And if you review your VODs and you look for those mistakes and you're critical and honest with yourself, then you can totally improve too. And like I believe Infinite Magic mentioned, there's a lot of really awesome places where you can have someone else look over your stuff. I'm sure Voltaic, some of the lovely people on the Discord server, would be happy to help you look through some of your FPS or aiming scenarios. And just remember that you can improve in whatever situation you're in. And I also think that if you are enjoying the game, that's also important. But I think a lot of people like to enjoy themselves by improving, so you can always do both.
Yeah, so let's get to the questions. First off, what's up, Kevin? What's up, Pew Pew? Yes, thank you, Kev. And Arthur, I did play a little bit of Fortnite. I didn't win big money. I did get to like the top 500 for the World Cup week 1 solos. So I've gotten there. I've done deliberate practice, and so I want to leave this time now for you guys to ask questions in the chat, and we're gonna also, if you guys are in the Discord stages, raise your hand, and we're gonna go through these questions one by one. We're gonna probably leave like 15-ish minutes for this. So ask away, guys. And if you guys are looking up for coaching, Machine, right? I love this man. He has answered very well. He's provided a lot of great context. So he's a good example of a good coach. Okay, so
Exactly.
reach out to him. So we have Infinite Magic. Question about frustration steps. Should you feel that emotion strongly for it to benefit you? I tend to have to be somewhat detached in reacting to negative, positive emotions, so I don't get tilted. Should emotion strongly? So I think this gets more into the discussion of like sports psychology, which is definitely not our primary competence, but I do think that just depending on how you perceive it. Wait, so the question is, should you feel that emotion strongly for it to benefit? Yeah, I guess everyone's the intensity of that emotion of frustration will be different based on a lot of factors. So many factors. How you've been raised, how you've handled that frustration in across multiple situations, and what we can control is not the emotions, but we can control our thoughts, right? And so if we think of frustration as a good thing, again, it's the perception that's important and what we can control. Then we can gradually change how we respond to that. And so what you say is like you be detached and reacting to it. That's a mental skill that you've developed, which is amazing. So you don't get tilted, but you can still stay detached and still say, okay, well, I'm getting frustrated. I'm detached from it, and then now I can also say that it's good for me. I can dig deeper in this frustration, and I'll likely come up with an aha moment or get to a point where I am progressing or learning for whatever specific goal or target. Did you have anything to add, Jonathan?
I think that you're exactly right. He or she developed a awesome mental skill, and I think the key part here is recognizing that you, like you mentioned, that you are still feeling these emotions, and then using it to fuel improvement if you'd like. But it's that choice of letting the emotion affect you or not, that's the big thing here, in my mind.
Okay, so we have Troubled
Yeah.
in our
On Discord.
Discord. Yeah. Hey, Troubled. I just gave you access to speak if you want to ask us a question. Happy to respond. And then we'll get to some of these other questions in chat. I send you that invite.
Okay,
Hello.
okay, can you hear me?
Yes,
Oh,
sir.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So, what, for instance, I'll just use a Fortnite as an example, but, what if, like, for instance, like, mechanical wise, you go into a fight and you can't gain any damage on somebody, like, and you go to VOD review the game.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, how is there a way you can, like, for instance, like, you go for an angle,
Mm-hmm.
but
Right.
you don't hit the shot. But
Mhm.
when I look back in a lot of my games,
Right.
it's either one, like, my movement was bad,
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
so I either miss a shot or do low damage, or my aim was bad.
Mhm.
But is there can we use, like, deliberate practice to, like, put these things together, the practice, so that way we can improve both, like, at the same time, or, you know, maybe mix them?
Okay. So if I'm getting the correct question here, it's how do you integrate two skills and improve both at the same time? And I like how you're still breaking those two things down into it's an aim thing or it's a positioning thing, but it sounds like you're struggling with both at the same time, and you also want to use both at the same time, obviously.
Jonathan,
Is that
can
correct,
you-
Troubled?
Can you mute
Yes. Because
your Google?
like,
Yeah.
because when I watch really pro players, they seem to do it, like, subconsciously, right?
Right.
So, like, I just want to find a way to rep it in a way which I can attain the skill also.
Right. I would recommend looking at. I think it would behoove you to do the specific steps first. So it's figure out the positioning part first, then figure out the aiming part, improve those separately, and then try to put them together. Because it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you're struggling with both sides here, both the positioning and the aim.
Yeah, because they're definitely.
Mhm.
I definitely have to work on my aim. Sure.
So,
Okay.
so you know, I just
Matt,
wanted to
feel
add
free
a
to
little
chime
bit.
in here.
Yeah, because you know, I
But I
understand this
think
very, very
Going
much.
for
Uh,
one
Go on.
of these first instead of both would be helpful.
Yeah, I definitely want to chime in because you know I love Fortnite. I understand Fortnite. I do think that you have to decide. You know, you can definitely work on both. You know, but not everyone has infinite amount of time to work on that, right? And I think in general, a lot of the times positioning offers us more benefits in the game of Fortnite, right? And positioning meaning like how do you optimize your peak through builds or through sequences of builds and relative positioning to give you the best chance of getting damage on them, right? And I know there's a lot of nuance with that in the world of Fortnite, but it might mean breaking down in this situation when I am trying to take this wall and I'm on a ramp, or when I'm trying to take this wall and I'm on a cone, or when I'm on top of him and I'm trying to break his cone, or I'm trying to break his flat on top of his box, right? There's all these situations you kind of have to understand. Okay, well, I didn't approach it well this time. Then there is this other approach that I need to test and try, and that's the deliberate practice part, right? You're breaking it down into that specific goal of, okay, when I'm trying to take a wall, if I'm just taking a wall directly, there's obviously disadvantages of that in the game of Fortnite. I'm sure you can speak a little more volumes as to the like whether it's a 50-50 or a 70-30, but depending on what the situation is and what fights, you can't just apply the one rule to all of them. If it's like, oh, I was box fighting at circle 4, that's completely different than an end zone like engagement, right? So or like moving circle engagement. So you can you can categorize these as, okay, well, like I just need to work in general on box fighting because that will help me make better peaks. That will help me better understand how I can position myself relatively to take peaks, right? And
then work off from there.
Exactly. And something that I did back then, way back then, was I always had one guy when in the prac court that I was in, like just like subtle, just a humble brag, right? I was in the prac court, but anyways, like I would always have one guy. I would be like, yo, I'm trying to practice this. Help me. Like, I keep dying here. And I would literally load up and do box fight practice with him. And I would create the situation, like in creative. And I would just do like, all right, I'm just going to push you and, fight me. And it helped. That is how you create repetitions quickly, right? And that's why a lot of people do box fighting. But it could be even more specific by designing it in the creative. And there's all these Fortnite training maps, right? Like the close shotgun aim maps. Those are great for aim. But it just depends on what you are working on. Hope that makes sense. Did that sense. Was that clear?
That helped all, actually.
Great.
I'm glad. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
You're very welcome.
Great. Okay, so
we got a couple questions on YouTube, Matt.
Got it.
So, let me mute here.
All right, I'm back. I think Jumping Avocado had a question on YouTube.
Yeah, just ask. Just go ahead. Just let's go scroll it up.
Hold on 1 second, guys.
I'm here. Sorry. Okay,
There
so yeah, go through whatever question you want. I think we got quite a few things.
Yeah. So Jumping Avocado is asking, what is the best way to translate my training in game? Usually after practice, he feels better, but as time goes by, it seems to regress for him. This is a great question. It is always that difficulty translating training into performance. And part of that is, for me, making sure that I'm playing in practice in a similar headspace as I would in game. So having that intense focus, so not just going through the motions, but deliberately and intentfully doing the situations or whatever practice I'm doing, so that it's a similar headspace when I go from practice into performance. And also, one thing I find personally that helps is when I go into game to remember all that practice I just did. So say if I was working on tracking, so taking a minute or two before game just to visualize, okay, I did all the practice for tracking, and now I'm going to apply it. And Matt, feel free to add anything.
Yeah, so I would say exactly that. And the thing that we typically recommend is you have to have performance keys, right? These like quick goals that you're referencing before you enter a game. You can think, all right, well, I'm going to work on, let's say Jumping Avocado, you play Valorant. I'm going to work on making sure that I play more patient in mid-round. So you, instead of taking an engagement, you play more patient there. And you are actively thinking that before you go in so that you are more likely to make the better decision. And then the other answer is here, right on the screen, right? This is sort of the stages of learning. We're first unaware of what we suck at. Then you know what you suck at. Then you can do the task with effort. You're conscious about it, which is probably where you're at. And then you can eventually, when you practice enough, you do it without thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So
exactly.
that is sort of the approach. And oh man, okay, Machine Right answers. I think I answered it for him. Sorry, Machine Right. Would have been great. Maybe. Oh, I want him to actually talk about it. Machine Right, if you don't mind, I'd love to have you respond. Hey, buddy.
All right.
Hey, man. Machine, what's up?
Yo.
If you don't mind, I would love to get your opinion to answer any of these questions.
Mute on Google.
Sorry.
Yeah. So
okay.
what I was gonna first talk about the guy that asked a Fortnite question.
Sure.
I wanted to chime in about that. I have my own question as well, though. It doesn't really relate
please.
to any of this. What should I start with? Should I answer my opinion on the other thing, or should I?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that.
Yeah, answer the question first.
So the thing with Fortnite is, I think, like almost everything fighting wise can be like practiced without like a conscious goal. So like all of those little fighting habits, you can do that like in solo creative even without anybody playing, right? And I think also the question was kind of rigged to begin with, because you can't really VOD review and decide that the issue was aim, right? If the issue was aim, then obviously you put yourself in a position where, you know, you're relying on your aim, right?
Right.
But yeah, I think for Fortnite, it's really difficult to apply this kind of stuff because there's so many different like multitasking elements going on that
Definitely.
that
It is
it's
not
almost
easy.
it's more about like the kind of questions or the kind of issues I see with Fortnite is more like, it's not like the people don't know what mistakes they're making. It's more about, I know the mistakes, but I can't stop making them. That's the kind of stuff that I see. But and yeah, like really like the way to fix that is more like going in creative. Actually, kind of like what you said, but you gotta create all of your habits like before you actually get into the game.
Exactly.
It's not like really like Valorant where there's like a lot less stuff going on at once. You know, like you
Yeah.
have a lot of downtime in Valorant. You know, to think about
100%.
strategies.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyways, the question I had was more about like motivation, and I've asked this a couple times because my biggest issue with actually like, well, first of all, so I see a big issue with coaches, and a lot of coaches will go and they'll list all their accomplishments of like pros that they've coached and worked with as if like they're taking like credit for their entire career. But I've like yet to see somebody that has like a zero to hero like example. There's like nobody that I've seen that was actually able to take someone that was like nothing and like turn them into a pro. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think the main thing stopping me from doing that is that it's mostly motivation for people, right? It's always like somebody will quit before, you know, they've actually put in enough work to like get to that level.
Right.
Yeah, it's and that's really tough, right? I mean, we haven't even gotten into the discussion of right like talent versus or just talent in general and how that impacts performance, right? You can't train talent. Talent is something that we have to consider. But you're right? Like there is this issue of motivation sometimes, and I mean not sometimes, always, right? We always have to consider motivation when it comes to working with players, working with athletes. And the number one thing, at least for me, and again, sports psychology is not the primary competency. We have psychologists on staff. I would say the number one thing is understanding at the very root of it, what is their why? Like, can they speak to that with full clarity, and like working that out with them at the very beginning, because you have to create that expectation that, hey guys, this is not going to be a walk in the park. There's going to be difficulty along this path. There's going to be times where you're going to feel like you're worse. The journey is not straightforward, and if they have a really strong and solid why, right, this really strong desire to compete, then that can be something that they can be either reminded of, or it's something that's developed within their morning practice, or how they approach their day, right? Continually reminding themselves of that, because it's easy for us to forget that as we work with a coach or we work on ourselves. We get so tunnel vision into this one mistake, and you know, when there's repeated frustrations of failure, that leads to us not wanting to continue, right? So it really takes this, I think, holistic approach and understanding of like, okay, well, I need to zoom out every now and then and understand, you know, my end goal, so that I know that this is maybe just a temporary dip in motivation. And I would say there's so many other factors to consider too, right? Like, are they sleeping well? Are they what about their mental health? What about their emotional health? How do they cope with stress? Those are also added things that need to be addressed to make sure that they can positively respond to maybe times where they are frustrated. I don't know. That was really pretty lengthy for me, Machine. But
yeah, I know it's a hard question to answer, and that's why I usually ask it, because I've asked other people about it and just to see what they think.
So what? Yeah.
I
What?
would-
Do you, sorry. What?
No, some people are talking about discipline versus motivation, and I think that definitely has a place in this conversation too. But I think also when we're talking someone from zero to hero, someone who's an amateur going to the pro level, discipline can take you to a certain degree, but it's if a person really, really, really wants to stop, then they're gonna stop. And I I agree that having a really strong why can really help mitigate part of that, because if you can bring it back to what was your primary motivation for doing this, then it can almost be a guiding light when they're in that dip in performance or in that hard times.
Yeah, I
And
don't
having
think. Sorry. Go on.
sorry, go ahead. I was just going to add that having a growth mindset helps a lot too, knowing that setbacks are just opportunities to grow as opposed to a indictment of your character or who you are as a person.
Right. I don't think there's ever going to be an easy answer to that question. It's always this holistic approach and like multidisciplinary consideration of like, okay, well, we got to kind of break down to see where you're at with everything. And, how can we help you address the underlying reason why you may have this dip in motivation? But love that perspective, love that question too.
Great question.
It seems to be like that one, like intermediate stage, because they come out and they get all of this like improvement, and they get to a certain level, and then it's just like a flat line, because like there's so many like little like tiny habits that they need to like build subconsciously and like implicitly before like they actually start getting to the next level, and it's like you don't see improvement, right? But for my usually my motivation method is just that like the harder you grind, the more satisfying it's going to feel when you actually do make it. But the issue is if they're not feeling any satisfaction, and they have no reason to believe me, right? So I don't know.
I do like that. I do like that approach, right? But I think the thing is, like, as a coach, you can direct their conscious attention to the objective improvements that they're making, because, it comes down to decisions at the end of the day, right? And, you can highlight and positively reinforce some of those things that they are making progress even as intermediates, where they don't see success or progress in maybe end results of like, I'm just losing a lot. But doesn't mean you're not learning, right? You are still learning and moving forward in the grand scheme of things. So,
believe me, I tell them about this, and I tell them like, no, dude, you have improved definitely, but it's like to the point where it's like they're almost like, wow, this is way too hard. Screw this, and then they that's kind of like I deal with.
Yeah,
and I think that's like the art of coaching, right? How do you provide smaller steps, and also like in the end you can do as much as possible, and some people just aren't ready to be developed at that point. And I don't want to say that it's always on them. I always take ownership for anyone that I'm working with, but if I've done everything that I can and provided as much as possible to them, and there have been cases where they're just not at the right emotional state or level to progress, and that's something coaches have to understand. There's a time and a place for people too. You can't force development.
And it's that old saying, right? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Yeah, you can do everything right, and then for whatever reason it may just not work, and that's okay. That's not any failing on you or the other person. It's just life.
Anyways,
that answers my question, so you can go and continue on. Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, thank you. Great thought-provoking question.
Yeah, really appreciate you.
Thank you for sharing. All right.
Let's get to 1 to 2 more questions.
Alrighty.
I know we have a lot. Let's see. What do you want to get to? You're muted on your thing. Don't forget that.
Thank you. Here, Matt, why don't you pick, since I picked the first one? Let's see. You got a lot of them here.
I mean, let's go Concube. In Rainbow Six, I'm trying to attack the site, and how do I deal with flanks alone, if I can't rely on my teammates, this is
Hmm.
not an easy response.
No.
It depends on, are you 5 stack? Are you 6 stacking, I guess?
Yeah.
Are you, what's your level of communication and your ability to communicate well in the ranked environment to
Yeah.
promote the right behaviors? And that's not easy. You're dealing oftentimes with people that don't care as much of the game as you, unless you're doing like a scrim, right? If you're really trying to improve on certain things, ranked is not the way for you, right? You want to do like a FPL. You want to do something where people are in the environment that and already want to improve, so that you're working on in a environment where you can more likely rely on your teammates. So I would say like putting yourself in the right environment first is maybe one of the first few steps, and then practicing communication strategies, right? How we communicate. There's a whole discussion here, but how we communicate influences everything, right? If you ask or ask questions or direct, and there's just so much nuance because everyone's personality is a little different. So you might notice that, hey, well, sometimes I call in some games and it seems to work really well, and sometimes I call in other games and it doesn't seem to work really well, and that's because everyone's different, right? In how they process information, how they respond to certain types of communication. So when you work with a specific team, that is what you need to deeply understand. How do my teammates respond to different types of communication, and how can I best direct them? That's why there's not a solid thing that works well for every single team, because every team will have to create their own communication structure and rules.
Yeah. And Rainbow Six is hard too because it is so dependent on callouts. And I think if you can set a good example, if you can do your best to make sure that you are getting those solid callouts out and people notice that they're not able to deal with the flanks, or whether your play helps with that, then that would be another thing I would recommend. Alright.
Toby has a really good question.
Okay.
He asked, is it worth breaking up practice into things like a workout split? Kind of like hitting a muscle group, working on aim or working on mechanics? Absolutely. Do you want to take this?
You sounded really excited, so I'm not going to rain on your parade.
Okay, yeah. So absolutely, right? Like, you can break up your practice into things, right? And again, it comes back down to step 0 or step 1. You evaluate what's important. We do the min-max or Pareto principle. We 80-20 it. We find out what is going to take and provide me the most value. And you maybe split it up into 3 to 4 things. I want to work on positioning. I want to work on aim. Or let's talk about just aim. I want to work on tracking, click timing. You split it up into different training blocks. Absolutely, you should be doing that. And it depends on what level of competency you're at as well too, right? We've gone through this in the last seminar about how different levels of, depending on whether you're intermediate, beginner, or advanced, different types of practice, whether it be series or blocked or random, will work out better for you, right? And random is a little better for advanced, more sequenced than mass practice. Is it mass practice? Yeah, it's better for your beginner and intermediate, right? So you have to be very honest. Where am I? Am I an intermediate? Am I a beginner? Am I advanced? And if I'm advanced, then I can get away with doing click timing, and then tracking, and then target switching, and then evasive maneuvering. Whereas if you're an intermediate, you probably do better by splitting up your blocks like you mentioned. Like, all right, today I'm going to work on 2 hours Kovacs, click timing, tracking. Next day I'm going to work on mechanical skills, and just splitting that up throughout the week like a workout split, and you'll gradually improve.
And just to expand a little bit on those orderings, so mass practice is when you repeat one task over and over and over again to maximize reps, and that's the best if we're just learning something, because you want as much exposure to that same mechanic as possible. Versus when you're a bit more intermediate, then you start interspersing it with other tasks. But you want it to be in a predictive way. So for example, you do click timing, then you would do tracking, then you would do dynamic click timing, and that ability to know what task is coming up is it allows for more variety, but in a way that's more controlled. Versus when you go random, that's the most similar to an in-game situation, and will help you translate those skills over a little bit better. So instead of knowing what's coming, you randomize it.
Exactly. Okay, I think we've hit 15 minutes. Maybe we can answer one more question in the Discord stages. Slurp me, if you're still here, I just gave you permission. I'm gonna mute myself on Google. I'm gonna unmute myself here. Hey, what's the question, my guy or gal?
Hello, you are still muted, Slurp. Oh, maybe they stepped away.
Maybe.
We'll give them a minute. Oh. Let's see. Troubled looks like he has another question.
All right, we'll get Troubled in here. Yeah, you can let's just invite everyone to speak. What's up, guys? Come on in. Let's do one at a time. Let's do Wolfie and Troubled. You're in here, so you can go right after that. Wolfie, what's up?
Nothing. How are you?
I'm great. Any question? What questions do you have?
I just want to.
Wolfie.
Oh, he just left. Oh no.
Wolfie, no. You're
Oh no.
gone. Well, let's get to Troubled. Hey, Troubled.
All right. Unfortunate.
For some reason, I didn't ask this question instead because I'm pretty dumb. But so what is it? I was working on a scenario yesterday called Bounce 180 Sparky. Probably know it. And as I was watching, so like a world record or like a high score of it, I realized that they kind of like do like they implement a lot of the click timing skills, but they also have this like what do you call it? Like it's kind of like they're adding rhythm to something while being able to implement all these other all the other regular click timing stuff. But in Bounce 180 Sparky, when I try to implement like their rhythm,
Right.
and I'm gonna do like I'm gonna miss a lot more. How and I also have like a 75 hertz monitor. So like how would I like? Is there any way I should like base off my improvement? Because like when it comes to aiming, I originally used to think that it was just how dexterous you are with your mouse or stuff like this. But when it comes to like improving on skills, like having this type of rhythm while implementing like skills, like is there?
Yeah.
Should I Bro, I hate my questions.
It's okay, Trouble.
So is the question
let me
then?
see if I can.
Yeah. So is the question then? Like how do you, best approach, working on this specific strategy, to like within Bounce 180 Sparky? Is that the right question?
Yeah.
Like so I think what you're also getting at is the idea that aim is not just what we obviously we have to have dexterity, we have to have motor control, that's there, but there's also other things to consider. One, visual strategy. Two, you can think of it as that too, rhythm strategy, right? What you and maybe those are potentially the same, but what you focus on and how and what you utilize in terms of the strategy of what you're focusing on can influence how you're performing, right? If you're looking at it versus if you're looking at just the side of it, using your periphery so that you can better shoot multiple targets, right? Like for Tower Frenzy, a lot of the times, if we have an eye tracker, they're just kind of looking at the middle and they use their peripheral vision to click things really quickly. So there's visual strategies to approach, right? But again, it comes down to, is this strategy that I'm going to test helping me or not, right? And so you have to say, all right, well, I'm going to try this rhythm for Bounce 180 Sparky. And if this rhythm isn't helping you achieve the end goal, then it's not helping you improve the aim. But also you have to think, is that visual strategy applicable to the game that you're playing? Because sometimes you're just training to get a higher score. And to get a higher score is not the same as, is this transferable to my game? Okay, and that's really, really important for you guys that are aim training, right? I don't care if you're the number 1 or top 5, but if you've created a strategy that helps you better implement into your respective game, for instance, I don't know, maybe like Fortnite, if there are like visual things within the aim training scenario that block or obstruct your vision a little bit, so you have to maybe focus harder, that allows you to track things visually better, right? That's more that's more transferable, right? So does that make sense, Trouble?
Yeah, and like another thing with Bounce ID Sparky is that, what is it, when they do these, like it's like a rhythm pause to check to see like how, it's like checking to see how good a food is, or how to best eat like food. Like they check to see how best to hit the target before moving on. And that was the main reason I wanted to learn this, just because like especially when like you're editing down somebody in Fortnite, like after you've gotten an edit down where like they're not looking at you or something, like how to best hit for the highest damage you possibly can to give you a better chance to win the fight.
Yeah. So the transferable skill is, how are you visually tracking them? Because you're actually assessing the trajectory of the balls that are bouncing, right? And in the same way, you want to assess the trajectory of the enemy position. Balls don't move like players, but they can move in predictable patterns in a box that you have control of, right? So again, that's where it's transferable and why it's important, right? So great question. Slurp me, if you want to unmute and ask your question, go ahead.
Hopefully it works. Thanks for the question, Troubled. All right,
here?
Slurp.
Slurp.
We believe.
Slurp.
Ah, dang.
Okay.
Too bad.
We'll do verbals. What's up, verbals?
Yeah.
What's up? So I just wanted to ask a question real quick about how to like most efficiently enhance your performance. So like in a state of like finding that flow state where you find you're not, so like I've been doing a lot of like self-research and stuff like that about this kind of stuff, but where you don't want to push yourself too hard, where you create anxiety, where you're going for a score that's unachievable for you. So when you start getting on a pace that is unachievable, you start getting anxiety, you start missing shots that you should be making, simple shots, stuff like that. But then when you're doing something on a pace that's too easy for you, you get bored. You don't have that intensity in your practice. What do you think is the best way to find that? And if so, best way to apply that to like any game, if that's a MOBA, RTSs, FPSs, stuff like that.
Okay. So this is again veering into the sports psychology realm, which isn't our main core competence, but what you're talking about is being able to turn on the performance when you want. Is that correct, Verbals?
It's more, I think, like the framework that you're describing is the Yerkes-Dodson law, or eyes off, which is like the individual zone of optimized function.
Function,
right, like or like flow, or how I can't pronounce his last name, the McChai, right? It's that guy. So it's all that theory of how do you optimize your arousal levels to achieve optimal performance. And it is individualized, right? It is definitely. I think it's a tough question, but it can be done. I think one of the most common approaches that sports psychs and at least like us as performance coaches have is like, well, we can adapt a pre-game or pre-performance routine to help you manage and identify your state, That's number one. So that you can identify, what is your level of alertness? What is your level of arousal? If you're over aroused, if you're taking too much caffeine, I'm too tunnel visioned, or if I'm too relaxed, I did too much deep breathing, I need to amp myself up. So you can do these strategies to achieve the right level of alertness or autonomic arousal, right? You can use breathing strategies to calm down. You can, do 10 burpees to amp yourself up. You can take caffeine to increase your autonomic arousal. There's strategies, but it depends. It's individualized for you. Everyone's inverted U is different. Everyone's inverted U is maybe might be shifted a little more towards the relaxed end. They perform better that way. But then there's also, right, it's cue specific, right? You can't exactly, so Machine Right says you can't consciously activate it. It's you fall into this state of a certain level of arousal where your range of focus picks up more or less the right amount of cues to help you make decisions. When we are too aroused, right, that's a theory, you tunnel vision, you can only see 1 to 2 things and you make your decisions based off that. A lot of the times when we're stressed, that's what happens. When we're too relaxed, we see everything. We see the mini map. We see all these things. We're trying to focus on too many things at once. We're thinking about where they could be. We're thinking about my aim. You also become stuck in this analysis paralysis, right? So your goal is to, one, develop strategies to limit maybe this amount of self-talk, but also two, you want to identify the right level of arousal for you so you can pick up on the right cues, and then you fall into what a lot of people say is this state of flow. But essentially it's just the state where you're picking up on the right cues and making the right decisions. I think it's sort of a misconception in that, you always make the right decisions. Although, it can sometimes feel like that because you are getting the dopamine associated with you making the right choice. So it's not always that. It's just maybe this state where you have the best, maybe we'll say the optimal level of focus to pick up the right amount of cues in a game. Does that answer your question, Rebels? Hopefully it did.
Yeah, I asked the question due to I haven't heard y'all answer, so I wanted to see if and apply it to other people that maybe don't understand that concept.
Got it. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Like Matt was saying, it's a really personal thing. So if you can find those things that amp you up or bring you down, they can let you manipulate how you're feeling so that you can be in that optimal state.
Yeah, because I do the concept of like breathing and meditation to calm me down. Sometimes I am getting too anxiety, like if I am in an intense game or I am competing at a high level and I am having that trouble, I will do deep breath, stuff like that. And maybe some other people can apply that to their own game if they are getting anxious or if they are getting too relaxed, they can do a couple push-ups or something like that.
Exactly. And everyone's different, right? I know some players that like to run their hands through cold water or like warm water. It just feels good for them. And some players that just have to sit up tall, or some people that just need to close their eyes. There's just everyone. You can explore your own strategy, but the structure that you can create some levels of consistency around your performance are, hey, if I just have this pre-game routine and I have a stress management routine, then you can maybe say that it will increase your likelihood of better performing.
Your consistency, your performance.
Exactly.
If you're able to find that.
Yep, exactly.
Thank you guys.
No problem. Slurp me, you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Woo!
Yeah, he's here.
What's up, man?
Finally. Hi, thank you for having me on. Alright, the question I wanted to ask is that I play aim trainers. I started playing Valorant about 2.5 months ago, and I have really consistent aim and performance on Kovacs, but whenever I go over to Valorant, it's not the same. I don't hit heads as consistently. I don't flick to my target as consistently. I just wanted to ask you is there like a theory for that? Is there an answer for that? Or is it just my mind state or anything like that?
I don't mind answering this, John. So when I first got into esports, this was a question that I was thinking about a lot, right? And there's this idea of, right? These mechanics that you can train outside of the game, and ultimately they are transferable skills. But the thing is, the mechanics of the game is not always completely replicated in the AIM training environment, whether it be Kovacs or AIM Lab, right? AIM Lab has attempted to recreate it by creating those maps, partnering with Valorant, and in a way, it can create this perception in your mind to give you confidence. But the number one thing is, it still does not replace maybe doing in-game warm-up work or in-game training that you've developed a competency already through Kovacs or AIM Lab. Then you need to transfer that competency over to in-game aiming, and you can't. I wouldn't say it's black and white that you just can't expect it to. I'm sure some people can directly translate it just due to their natural ability to transfer some of these skills over, and maybe they have a history of playing CS:GO. But I would say you also have to actively train, whether it be through deathmatch or doing the training range, and actually spend some time playing in the actual game to develop the in-game competency and feel, because it's not the same. It is the same, but it's not exactly within the mechanics and the realm of the game. So I would say, like, if you wanted to, in terms of modification of training, it would probably be like, okay, well, I've hit this pretty great competency of aim training, and now I want it to transfer over. I'm going to spend a little more time doing training range at different heights in the training range, at different angles in the training range, and then I'm going to do deathmatch. And you will see it gradually improve.
Okay, because I have done those things, but whenever, like in deathmatch, my aim is great. Whenever I'm not in a high intensity environment, my aim is great. So I think it's more so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it has to do with that. Because I do have good aim, I know I do. But whenever I'm in a game or something like that, it either has to do with my mind, like being in a flow state, or me just being in a very aware and anxious state, I feel.
Yep. So it's very common to have, how you manage stress in the game influence your mechanical skill, right? You have your heart rate elevated, and it's what we actually just discussed with machine right? If you can calm yourself down, your level of autonomic arousal, so that you aren't overthinking, you aren't overfocusing, because ultimately when you're performing, you're not thinking that much. People aren't thinking. They kind of just they execute on what they execute on all of the practice that's done. They might pick up on a few cues and make decisions off that, but they're not thinking, okay, what am I doing here? I'm gonna walk over here and do this. It's just very smooth flow of performance and execution, and it's not easy to answer this, because it comes down to understanding how you manage stress, like working with a sports psychologist or getting into performance psychology to understand why you are feeling stress in the first place, and then and developing coping strategies to manage your stress, whether it be breathing or whether it be telling yourself, hey, this game is the same as every other game. It's just there's the pressure of rank. Is that a reason for me to get stressed? And a lot of the times, some people will say yes, but some people will be like, oh, well, not really. The game hasn't changed just because there's the pressure of being a diamond, right? And a lot of the times it's that perception that sets aside a good player from a great player. I don't care if it's ranked, and a lot of the times people are like, oh, I also play better when I'm like a little tired, because they don't think about that as much, right? Like there's just a lot of reasons why. So I would just urge you to kind of, dig a little deeper, like, oh, well, why am I stressed? And what's the reason why I might be anxious about a certain situation?
Okay, so like you said, just think of a strategy and coping mechanisms to just help further my gameplay and not be as anxious when I fight.
Right.
Yes.
And digging a little deeper into like, okay, well, what is the situation that I'm getting stressed about, or what's causing me to be stressed? And then like asking yourself why, like, well, why am I stressed about, this? And not a lot of people do that work. That's work. That's mental work.
Yeah. And good on you for being able to diagnose and figure out where in your gameplay that the issue was.
Yeah, because I know I could be good, so I take it seriously.
For sure, man. It's
Yeah.
not easy, but just take the time and you will see the reward for it. And if you need someone, right, like it is still helpful to get an outside perspective, like for us, but even someone that might be better suited for like performance psychology, if they can help you better understand the perspectives to take, or learning about coping strategies, learning about strategies to manage stress, like just deep breathing, or telling yourself to focus on, I'm just going to focus on this when I feel this. Like having these pre-prepared strategies can help you better manage it in the moment than dealing with it then and there.
Okay, that makes sense. So just try to reach out to maybe somebody that has the knowledge and experience of the situations or basically the questions that I have. It'd be better to ask someone that has been in those situations. Is what you're saying, like a coach?
Yeah, it could be a coach, or I think essentially what we're saying is just like break down the reason why you're getting stressed.
Okay.
That's the
Yeah.
key thing, because
Okay,
that's
thank you,
leading
guys.
for you to perform differently. Yeah, no problem, man.
Yes.
Have a
Good
good rest of
question.
your day. No, thank you.
Good question. Thanks for speaking up.
Later.
Have a good one. Okay.
Okay,
What do you think?
I think we're gonna end this, guys.
Yeah.
I'm getting a little tired. Been talking a while. I ran out of water in my water bottle, so that's a sign for me. Just about done. Hope you guys learned a lot, guys. If you guys don't mind doing us a favor, if you can tweet out one or two, maybe just one thing that you learned from this, one thing that was helpful, that would help us out a lot. We really appreciate you guys taking the time to do this. And hopefully this was beneficial for you guys as a community, and we're hoping that we can do more of these for you guys. This is our first test at doing this combination stream Discord stage. I thought it was pretty cool, but if there was kinks, we'll work it out. And that is all. Thank you guys. If you guys can tweet it out again, we'd really appreciate that. And any last words on your end, Jonathan?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody for coming out. Thanks for all the great questions. We had some really insightful ones, and it sparked some really great discussion. And just keep deliberately practicing.
Exactly. Purposeful practice and expert coaching.
Exactly.
And develop your mental representations.
That too.
All right.
All right.